Just how do you raise money for a business? What's that structure look like? And exactly how do kickers work? So those two are going to get lumped together in this video that's actually a blast from the past. So this video was recorded about 2 years ago. It is a video that goes through those topics, but it looks at them for my elite mastermind that I used to run. I used to coach very, very high level people from the top of their profession in primarily in real estate, but also in other industries as well. All right. So let's say there is a building that you want to buy. And actually, I'm going to talk about this in the exact context that I did this in. So I'm going to tell you what that was. And one of the projects I was working on, and I still think is an incredibly great business tool, this project actually never got started, but we got everything formed. We had investors who were interested and were coming in. And fortunately, it didn't happen, and you'll find out why in a minute. So you've identified a property. So you find a good property, but you also, the purpose for occupying that property is a business entity. And I don't know how to draw a business. I'm going to draw money. All right, so this is the business. So in my case, Anya and I were working on a project, which is still a tremendous idea. It was to do not a cloud kitchen, but to do basically executive suites for kitchen space. So take an existing warehouse, something like that, convert it into commercial kitchens, and then rent those spaces out on a month-to-month or a year lease. Basically turn it into an executive suites for kitchens. Now, the advantage of doing that is all of your co-packers also use this same model. So people who sell to grocery stores, people who sell in places like that, cannot operate, and you cannot sell food, at least in California and probably throughout the country. You cannot sell food to a grocery store, and you cannot sell food to even a restaurant unless the cooking itself takes place inside of a commercial kitchen. A commercial kitchen. So, whereas a cloud kitchen technically can. So it's really becomes a point on, is there a interface between the cook and the public? If there is someone in between, there needs to be a commercial kitchen. So you can do this where you can sell at the farmer's market. That is allowed in California, but you cannot sell to grocery stores or to restaurants. So the people who occupy these things are bakers who bake fresh baked goods and then sell those to restaurants who then use it as part of their service, or they sell it to coffee shops with a nice pastry. You have school lunch programs occupying these places, or caterers occupy these places, because to do catering, you really shouldn't be doing that in your kitchen either. That should be taking place in a commercial kitchen. So our idea was that executive suites for there. So as part of that deal, we needed some number of dollars, and I forgot what it was. And so we would buy a property and we would form the business. Now, the business, in our case, didn't need any capital from the business in order to get started. We didn't need to put in any money in the business, but the structure is still the same. So we did need money for the property. So we were in escrow to buy, how much was it? I don't know. It was maybe let's say it was a $3 million building. I don't remember. It was in Van Nuys. It was a very cool building. So we needed $3 million. And then total. So the building may have been 2 million. I should write it that way. All right, 2 million for the building itself, plus 1 million to build out the space and to kind of finish the business. So we needed to raise this $3 million. So how do we do that in terms of investors? Because Anya and I wanted to own this business forever, right? So we wanted to own the business forever. The property, however, wasn't the play here for us. It was a good property, and it would be significantly higher value because it had all this new kitchen standards in it. But it wasn't like that's where we were going to make the money. The profit on the business itself was huge. So our estimates were it was not going to be a problem in order to pay like 30% returns to our investors back. Not a problem by any means. So how were we going to run that? So we went to the investors and we told them, look, here's the way that this business is going to operate. We're putting together an LLC that owns the property, right? That owns the property. It's going to do all of this work ahead of time in order to build out the kitchen space. And in exchange for that, the business was going to have a lease with the property. Now, it wasn't going to just have any lease. It was going to have a percentage rent lease. So a percentage rent lease says that the rent amount wasn't going to be fixed. The rent amount was going to be based on the income of the tenant. And in that way, as the business took off, the rent that was getting paid for the building was going to go up and up and up. And that's how we were able to do 30%. So rather than having it be something like the that rent itself was going to be 10% of our income, or actually it was 10% of sales. We said, no, it's going to be, and I don't remember what the exact numbers is. It's going to be 40% of net. And here's how we define and how we're going to monitor the nets. And so ultimately, that's how the investor gets the money. Now, you can absolutely do this model too. And I know that some of you are looking at the same model where you've got a business that you want to buy, and it will occupy a property. But just how can you buy the business with investor money but not give them any profit for it? And so this is the mechanism to do that. What we also did is say, okay, and in year 7, we now have a buyout clause. Just like we talked about Grant Cardone's buyout clause, we have a buyout clause for us in year 7 at this way we calculate it based on percentage over the of what sales is. So that way we had a built-in mechanism in order to value the property and the dollar amount. So it was all spelled out in the PPM. It was all spelled out in the operating agreement. It was very clear how that was all going to work in our business plan. So it was that is the structure that you do it. I will backtrack just slightly to say the reason that it was a good thing that it didn't that this particular business didn't happen was because our date of estimating on when this would start looking for tenants was March 15, 2021. I'm sorry, 2020. I hear I had this great lead up and then I go and ruin it with the year. March 15, 2020 was the day that tenants were supposed to start coming in. Oh my God, that would have been a disaster of epic proportions. That was a good example of God or the universe stepping in and saving our bacon. So, didn't work. It was a really great idea. The problem started coming in as we got closer towards removing contingencies is our estimated cost was going up and up and up. And the city of LA was also being really inflexible when it came to parking. And the more they were strict about parking, the needs for the parking in this area was it was above what was there. So it was underparked for the industrial building that it was. And then suddenly we wanted to put in all of these kitchens there. The city hated that idea. So they were getting very mean. They were saying, well, no, you need to find a lot more parking. And we also don't think that you've done the handicap parking is really accessible either. So that's why the deal fell apart. So fortunately, deal fell apart because, oh my God, what a disaster that would have been. So, all right, let's talk about kickers. So anybody wants more detail on that, just ask me too, because that deal was, I worked really, really hard on that deal and it was going to be amazing. And it's really it's very similar to what business a lot of you that some of you I know are working on right now. It's just in a different kind of industry, but it's the same business model. So think about it and feel free to reach out to me and we can collaborate on your business plan and make sure that it's as awesome as this business plan was going to be. So let's talk about kickers. There are a few different times when you need to start thinking about kickers. So kickers are my word for incentives or bonuses. They're things that you give certain investors in order to come in to do certain things. So when do you need kickers? So certainly you need kickers when it comes time to make your deposit. It's cash. Cash for deposit. Another time you may need kickers is you need cash for due diligence. I never remember if due diligence is 1 L or 2. So I think it's 2 L. So we'll put in 2. If I'm wrong, sorry. A third time that you need kickers for is signing on the loan. So if for whatever reason you don't want to be a signer on the loan, you may need to offer incentives in order to get somebody to sign on the loan for you. So how do these typically work? Well, there's 2 different ways to structure it. And it comes down to, are they going to do it as an investor or as part of your team, right? Those are the two choices. Now, if it's going to be part of your team, it's actually a little bit simpler in some respects because this all takes place internally. It does. So this is your investment. This problem here, where they're here, doesn't have any visibility to the outside world. You are not under an obligation to say to your investors who all the people on your team are as part of your PPM. You can keep it quiet or you can make it public. It's up to you. Likewise, the deal that you get isn't subject to, or that you give, isn't subject to anybody seeing it and knowing what it is through the PPM. You do want to make disclosures for any money that's being paid to you, but this money being paid out to your kicker is totally irrelevant to them. They need to know how much money they're getting. They don't need to know how much money each person on your team is getting. So this generally takes place just through the operating agreement. To your company, or it takes place into just a side agreement between you, your company, and the person giving you the kicker. Now, when it comes to the investor side, now we need to start looking at it from, okay, now it does need to be disclosed and it needs to be set up in a specific way, because as a matter of the investment, they are getting a certain extra piece out of that dollar amount, right? So that could so here's how it is oftentimes structured. A good example of somebody who did this that we talked about was, again, Grant Cardone's syndication. In his syndication, remember, he had two classes of shares. He was calling them shares. They're actually membership units, but they're membership units. Two classes of membership units. And what it said was that, well, if you come in under this time period, because he wanted to close, and yeah, that's a third idea, is cash for closing. And this means, like, if you're short any money, where that money is going to come from. So someone who can take out the rest of the shares. So and can just basically guarantee that they'll take out the rest of the money for you. So we have two classes of investors. In his case, and this is off the top of my head, so I have to remember, it was something like, okay, if you come in here, you are going to get, it's going to be a straight 80-20 split of cash flows, right? That was his class A1 shares. If it's after that, so if you come in later, your split is going to be 65-35 split of cash flows. And then after this, what they did was they said, okay, if you're on the sale of the property, first everybody gets their money back, or when they buy it from you, because I think that's ultimately what their play is. When they buy it from you, then they will get, everybody gets their money back, and then out of any proceeds, that money is divided pro rata between the two pools. right? So pool one, let's say pool one represented 70%, and then 30% was the A2 shares. So 70% of the profit goes here, right? And then 30% of the profit goes here. And then out of this 70%, out of this pool of money, it is then split 80-20. And then out of this pool here, it's split 65-35. So that's how they did the kicker through the investment. Now, the easiest way to do it is through the team, but it also can be a nice way to kind of incent people to invest now, give us your money now because you're going to lock this in. You can say very clearly, look, we only have a certain dollar amount until we close our cash, our A1 shares. So you can buy in, obviously, at the A2 shares at any time. They, of course, would take that. Why wouldn't they? But we're only going to be taking money in our A1 shares, either until we close the whole deal or until we decide, which will be on September 15th or whatever you're going to choose. There we go. So that is the way that kickers work. If you're looking to raise money for your business, or you need to talk about kickers, or really anything as it relates to raising money under Regulation D so that you can be successful with your offering, whether it's putting the legal docs together, which of course we do, or you just need the additional help of also somebody who's been there before, who's been in your shoes, who's raised money, somebody who does his own deals still. That's me. So my name is Tilden Moschetti. I am a syndication attorney with the Moschetti Syndication Law Group. Love to talk with you and help you be successful with your Regulation D, Rule 506B or 506C offering.